Hi. So based on some feedback from a user, I decided to add this new feature to Animation Snapper Pro, and it's called Snap Preview. So this is to give you a better preview of what your snap's going to look like before the snap. And what it does, it creates a temporary constraint, just so you can preview what your snap will look like on those objects. So on normal static objects and stuff, you could have used just the offset helper to give you kind of like an idea of what it's going to look like. But when it comes to characters and rigs, it's a little bit harder to figure out where your IK of your character hands and stuff, for example, is gonna end up. So I decided to make this snap preview extra feature to this, so it's a little bit easier to imagine what, or not even to imagine, to actually see what your snap will look like before you actually do the snap. You can also use this just as a, if you just got a once off that you just want to create a constraint after your snapping, you can use this as well. So it is a preview, but it does create some proper constraints. But in the philosophy of this add-on, we want to basically stay away from constraints. So if you're going to do multiple switches, it's good to just kind of like clean these up afterwards, so you don't have to manage constraints again afterwards. But I'll just quickly show you then the basic workflow on how to use this. So it uses a lot of the existing interface, but here at the bottom now, there's a panel called Snap Preview. Let me just run you through like a very basic example of how to use this. So basically what you do, like you normally do if you're snapping, you select this as my source, and I select this as my snapped. I'm going to fill in that selection. Now I'm going to create this preview constraint. And you'll see here, based on the sizes you set here, it will create this helper for you. And then whatever is being snapped is going to be constrained to that helper. So if you grab this helper, you can actually animate this as well. So this will follow now. And you can actually even add extra animation to this if you want. But basically this is now constrained. So if I go to my constraint, it's got a copy location, a copy rotation constraint here, set to a value of 1. And it's just basically constrained to this. So when you create this, it creates this for you. And now you can see what your constraint's actually going to look like. And if I then go to, I'll bake it to frame 20, so this is 0 to 20. If I then bake it, this would have then been baked to keyframes, and the influence of this would have been set to 0. So it's not influenced by that anymore. So now I can go and delete all these preview constraints and clean up the scene again. So basically I could see what my constraints going to look like before I actually do the bake. And afterwards you don't have any constraints to deal with anymore. So that's cool. Okay, but say you want to still see what it looks like before that point. And now I want to do my next constraint where this cylinder is going to follow this cube. So if I want to still see what my previous frames look like, I can now just select this as my source, select this as my snapped, fill in the selection there to make sure everything is correctly filled in there. This time I'm gonna put this key influence start on, and then I'm gonna set my range. So set this from 20 to 40. And if you got this clicked on, it will only start influencing this at the start frame. So when I create this preview constraint now, you'll see here at the frame it starts, you can actually see what it looks like. But if you go to the frame before, it's set to 0. So that means I can see what my constraint looked like before that point. And because this influence frame has been set, it just creates a little frame to 1 influence there and 0 influence the frame before. I can see what my next snap is going to look like. So now, because this is already set, I can just proceed. And if I like what I see, I can just go proceed and then batch forward. And this would have been set to 0 now, so we don't need them anymore. So now I can just delete all those constraints. So now, once again, I'm left with this without any constraints that I have to deal with. But I got a very nice preview of what my animation was actually going to look like. And after I've done that, I just deleted all these preview constraints again. I mean, you can keep them, but I just like to keep my scene clean. So there we go. If you also just got one switch and you just want to keep it on a constraint, this is a quick way just to create a constraint at the point that you want that constraint to start. And then it will keyframe that start influence on the frame you've set. One thing to keep in mind with this, let me just delete all these keyframes of this. So let me just fill this in here. So fill that from selection, just make sure I've got the right things filled in there. Just bear in mind that it will create this offset based on your current offset. So it really matters where you create these. So if you wanted to snap from that point onwards, make sure you're on that frame. Say if I create it here, it will create it based on that current offset. So see that offset would have been where frame 10 was. So just keep that in mind. When you press this, it will create that offset constraint based on your current offset. So just as a note then, this delete all preview constraints will delete all these preview constraints out of your scene plus all these helpers. So if you want to clean up your scene, it will clean everything up, plus all the constraints if you haven't baked it yet. So this is just a general clean all these preview constraints up from your scene. And then when you create these preview constraints, so let me just fill this in again. When you create this preview constraint, if you look up here, it will fill in, or it will automatically fill in this as your new source. So once created, you can go directly to snapping. So like snap forward, backwards, batch snapping, whatever you were doing there, it will go directly to snapping because this will be automatically filled in by this helper. So the source, or the source becomes this helper, so this can snap directly to that. So once you create this, you can go directly to batch snapping. And then the other one that you might wonder about is this keyframe end influence. And this start influence will set when it starts influencing it on the start frame, but the start end will set it to the end frame. So if you're working backwards and you want to see the stuff that you already snapped here backwards, and then it will start having influence as you're moving backwards, that's when you would use that. You can't use both because it just, with constraints, they really get messed up if you have beginning and ending changes without extra constraints and setting the thing. So you can just do one at a time. But these are really just meant for a preview. So if anything of this messes up and you don't like the results, or there's a bit more to keep track of with these because you are actually creating constraints. If everything kind of like goes wrong, it's either check what you set in your snap and your source. That's most commonly, if you haven't checked there, it doesn't know what to create it on. And if anything goes wrong, most of the time you just basically go here and delete all these preview constraints. And that just means it cleans the scene back up again. So next, I'll just show you how this works in practice on a character. So I'll move on to that next. Okay, so I just wanted to show you guys that this works on a character and IK as well. And this is Auto Rig Pro Rig, and Auto Rig Pro Rigs has normally got whole of constraints on them, which this add-on will mute. But if you look at other videos, you'll see how that works as well. But I just wanted to show in practice how you can preview then animation on a character, or preview a snap on a character and see what the animation on the arm is actually going to look like. So let's see. So here I have two boxes moving. I have this box moving up from 0 to 30, and from 30 to 60 this one is moving forward. So first I want to snap this hand to follow this box and then this box. So here for my snapped, I'm going to use this bone picker and just going to fill in that IK hand controller there. And then I'm going to set this box as my source. I'm going to set my range from 0 to 30. And then let me just make this compact here. On the full interface, I got a little reminder of this workflow, but you can just put it to compact to get rid of that stuff. So the first, this one I don't need to set the keyframe, so I'm just gonna with that filled in, I'm going to create my preview constraint. My preview constraint would have been filled in there now as my new source. If you look at your reference helpers in here, and this would be over here, so this is this. So now my arm is constrained to that, and that is following this, is parented to that. So now I can see what my hand movement is going to look like. So I can see what it looks like there. And because this is already filled in automatically, as this is the new source, I can go direct to snapping. And this is my range. So I'm just going to batch that animation in and bake it in. I liked what it looked like. Okay. Now I can just delete all these preview constraints because I got that animation. And if you look on your arm, keys have been baked into that. And now I wanted to start following this one at frame 30. So I'm going to set my range to 30 to, say, to 60. This time I want to see what this previous animation looked like, plus a preview of what my next snap is going to look like. So I'm going to go here to 30 because it's going to create it based on that relationship. So make sure you're on frame 30. This time I'm going to put this on. I'm going to fill this now in as my new source, because this is the new source it's going to snap to. I'm going to create the influence keyframe. That's going to create a keyframe on that start frame of frame, oh, that should be 30. So I'm going to create that. So, and then you'll see here it goes from 0 influence. At frame 30, it starts influencing that. So that moves forward there now. But I don't like this wrist shape over here, following that box. So because this is its own object over here, I'm just going to go out of pose mode, select this. Just set a keyframe on frame 30 because that's the start of your connect there. If you don't set the keyframe there, it will kind of like have a little jump. And then I'm going to animate this. So this you don't have to do. This is just, I want to show you that you can actually create some extra animation just using that preview offset helper it created for you, because your hand is now constrained to that. And I'm just going to set another keyframe there. So my hand is going to do that kind of action now. So I can use it as almost like another animation layer, but that's completely optional. And then I'm just going to batch it forward again. I'm going to delete all these extra constraints I've got. And now I've got that hand following there, and I bake that motion into there. So you can get a very nice preview of what things will actually look like. Just for fun, let's do like another one. So I'm going to make another box there. I'm going to delete all the keyframes off it. So I'm going to set that as my new source. And I'm going to set it from frame 60 60 to 90. And I'm going to add some animation on this as well. So this, let this time, let it 90, go like this. So I want to see what that action is actually going to look like on my wrist. So with my frame set there, these been filled in correctly, I can create, I'm going to leave this keyframe on because I will still want to see my previous animation without the influence. You know, create this, this again. Now I can actually preview what that's going to look like. And I don't like the action of that. So I'm just going to grab this helper that I created. I'm going to adjust it. Oh, sorry, I forgot that says keyframe it. Start frame. And then I'm going to change it here to something that I like a bit more. So I can actually see what it looks like. So I can still use that. It's kind of like a temporary animation. So I like that action more. Now I can just, because that's been filled in now automatically there, I can go straight to snapping. So batch forward. I can delete all these extra constraints I created. And now I've got all three of those actions baked in using this previous snap to get a preview of what it actually is. Yeah, cool.